and welcome back to the Argyle CIO for Retail Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which includes complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Ron Thurston, author of Retail Pride and host of the Retail in America podcast. We are excited to have Ron and our panelists with us for a discussion titled Future-Proofing Retail with Technology Innovation. Welcome, Ron, and over to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brittany. I appreciate that. I'm coming to you live from Las Vegas at Shop Talk 2023. So you can see the pyramids behind me, so you know that I'm not in Egypt. I'm actually in Las Vegas. But this will be a pleasure to have this conversation with both of these gentlemen who are incredible experts in this industry and have a lot to say. So I'm excited to turn this over for some quick introductions. Dr. Koen-Pauwels, I would love for you to start.
Okay, well, Professor Koen-Pauwels, originally from Belgium, and then came to UCLA in 1997 to get my PhD in marketing. And as we discussed, I actually stayed at the Luxor several times because it was the only place to stay at the student budget on the Strip. I got tenure at the Tux School of Business at Dartmouth, then was 8 years at the Startup University in Istanbul, Turkey, and then came back in 2017 to join Northeastern University. My work is mostly in long-term effects of marketing, including retailing. I actually have 3 Best Papers Awards from the Journal of Retailing, which is the oldest journal in marketing, actually. And so it was a clear kind of focus of mine. About 4 years ago, I also joined Amazon Ads as a principal research scientist. So in that capacity, I have been bar raising the research there and talking a lot about retail media, which is currently a very timely topic. So pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Pete Gibson, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, good to see everybody. Pete Gibson, CIO, has been CIO at Alamo National Car Rental, CTO at Wyndham Hotel Group, CIO at Bridge Street. I ran an IT outsourcing company in Shanghai where we built Walmart.com, Red Prairie, Agilysys. And I just got done being CIO at Friendly's and Johnny Rockets, turning that company around and making it profitable.
Incredible. Congratulations to both of you. I'm really happy to have this conversation because there's so much conversation happening about retail technology. And I say that as coming to you from Shop Talk, where this is the most important conversations happening. And the one that I think we'll just get out of the way, because we know that it's going to come up, is around generative AI and the use of AI in retail, in e-com, in all parts of our industry. We know that this is a really important conversation that changes every day, just like generative AI. So maybe Dr. Pauwels, I'll turn it over to you, and kind of, you had mentioned just finishing a book on the topic and would love to hear your thoughts. There we go. Smart Until It's Dumb.
Smart Until It's Dumb, which is a great book by Emmanuel Magario, who has worked in the industry as a data scientist for a while. So I kind of agree with him in the sense that I've used AI for a while now, and it's just very good at specific tasks, right? Recommendations, and a lot of things that we as humans are, either not consistent enough or make some obviously biases and mistakes. I mean, to give you one example, I think there is a law in New York State that says that any AI algorithm for hiring people should be unbiased, which I think is really weird. I say, no, it should just improve on what people currently do. And we know of lots of human biases in hiring. So I think it's absolutely, that AI is fantastic to either replace some of the things that as humans, we just don't want to do or are not as good as doing, R2 most specifically work together with the human in producing fantastic results that are better than either, of the two sides can do. I am very skeptical on general artificial intelligence, which I just don't see happening anytime soon. And so, just like, in the 1990s in my PhD, I read this wonderful paper that says 50% manager, 50% modeler, because we're all making models to guide manager decision making, and every study shows that if you allow both the human and in this case the model, right now AI, to make the decision together in the specific task that they're better at, you just get way better results than any one thing. So I think the hype right now is a bit exaggerated. I think just like the previous three, AI winters, we will get back to a time where there's maybe some kind of disconfirmation of expectations, but I think some really good things will stand the test of time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I agreed, and the hype is live and well. I can tell you that. Yeah. It's every corner of this conference, and so Pete, I turn it over to you. Just having most recently in kind of restaurant world, how do you see AI playing into this space?
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, I'm gonna kind of like the doc, and he kind of said a few things that I think is kind of interesting. So the first I'm going to challenge the audience with is, what is AI? Yeah, I'm not trying to be flippant there, but if you talk to data scientists back in the early 2000s, the horizon of AI was OCR, optical character recognition. And now this day and age, you look at, we use this big buzzword AI, which normally on the back end side of it is a sensor or reading signals coming off of a data set and so forth, and then making a deterministic recommendation based off of it, based on a recommendation that's been set into that model to go do that. So I think that we as practitioners don't really understand AI and how it's really there. We end up with this another big buzzword that lives and dies for 2 years, 2 or 3 years. But I think there's some real practical uses for the data science and things like that. That are the foundations to AI. I think it's huge in personalization. I think it's huge in recommendations. I think that is going to have a really strong play for it. But we as practitioners have got to understand that it is, and the doctor said it right, in the world of business intelligence, we take a tool and put it on top of a big data set and we swirl the ocean. But in AI, we're trying to solve one specific problem. Rather, it's a recommendation like ChatGPT or a personalization or something of that nature. And then if we understand the business case and the use for it, I think there's a real application for AI. If you're just going to go in and say, we're going to have an AI capability, I think you're going to come out not doing too well.
Interesting. Would you compare that maybe to a year ago, the conversations on metaverse?
Yeah, metaverse.
Because I would say that's a word that actually isn't being used.
Yeah, but you go back to
which is interesting.
Look at metaverse, right? Everyone's so big on it, whatever. But back a long time ago when I was at Wyndham, we were looking at things like, I think it was Second Life and so forth, for learning academies and things like that, and it never got solid traction. And I think they bet the bank on that, and it just wasn't an uptake that people wanted to live in this world of goggles 24 hours a day. Another one we'll probably get into later on is augmented reality. Tons and tons and tons of potential. But how many people are really looking at that new toaster on the counter in their home, or how many are doing this or that with it? And it's just a great technology for certain applications, but maybe just doesn't have the broad appeal. And that's what the metaverse was.
So I agree. I mean, I would love to go back also. My first book is that it's not the size of the data, it's how you use it. And this is when the big data hype hit in like 2009, 2010. And I'm like, the organizations that I'm working with, they can't even make good use of the small data they have. So please first kind of make sure you understand, what exactly you're trying to solve for your business, and then how different technologies can be useful. And then you can really leverage them in a good way.
Yeah, completely agree. And you brought up a couple of other really hot topics that are currently great conversations, Pete. So around personalization, retail media, some of that. So what are some other big trends that you're excited about aside from AI?
Yeah, I think Internet of Things is starting to get traction. I mean, it was a big buzzword several years ago, but it's starting to get traction going into, and it's this simple stuff, folks. It's, you know, hate to say this, monitoring what's going on in the application on your cell phone. It's knowing what the freezer temperatures are all across the enterprise. It's having a broader data set coming back in. So I think that has a place. The one that I'm still bullish on, and it's kind of old, but I'm a huge believer in analytics. I mean, all this stuff is but it's the problem with most organizations is they live in stovepipe analytics. Here's my IoT information, and here's my web information, and here's this. And so I'm a big believer in the data architecture, being able to bring it together so that we can have one view of the customer and almost a near real-time sense. You know, we are challenged. Everyone always likes to talk about omni-channel, but they often forget at the backside of to really execute omni-channel well is you need an omni data set that can really support it well all the way across the omni-channel. So it's so I'm really bullish on analytics. Augmented reality, I'm not too big on. Payment technology, it reigns supreme also. You know, yeah, contactless payment, the watches and stuff like that, it is cool and it's fancy, but the payment providers can do a pretty good job at that. What I think is really geared towards is a frictionless shopping experience, whether it's in restaurants or retail or whatever. In that frictionless experience, it's also kind of got to be personalized. Some people like to go in.
Yeah.
Me, I'm a look at it on the internet, go in, purchase it, get the heck out of there, right? Other people like to go in and mingle. And we've got to be able to support that all the way across the board in a personalized shopping experience, which is really kind of what mobile payment kind of does for us also. And then the final one that I'm still kind of think is really going to start coming to play is sustainability. It is supply chain viability, which leads us kind of back into the blockchain technologies. I do think that in pharmaceuticals with, you know, depending on how much you're following the fentanyl stories and so forth, how trustworthy are the medications that someone may give you? How trustworthy is that product you're buying? Is it used by somebody else, i.e. produced like a slave labor, or is it really a natural fiber and so forth? Being able to prove that. And I was kind of skeptical on that initially. And I started talking to my daughter, who is a Gen Z, and she kind of says, you know, I'm brand loyal due to their sustainability policy. So she is brand loyal to Patagonia, not because they create good gear, but because of their sustainability policy. And I think that's going to start creeping through the retail industry, the big block guys, the service guys like me, and so forth.
Okay, I'd like to take kind of three things that you said, Pete, and also kind of answer the first question that we see here, right? So I completely agree with Pete on sustainability. So I'm doing some research now in how consumers are very different than institutional investors, how they look at environmental, social, and government action, the ESG, that is very hot, a debated topic right now. Number two, a seamless consumer journey and allowing for personalization. And so some shoppers being extremely goal-oriented and just want to buy it right away, for instance, online, or this whole web rooming phenomena that you search things online and then maybe buy them in the physical store. That is something that is key in my research. And then finally, I mean, the reason my book this year is called Break the Wall is exactly what Pete started out with. So inside organizations, we see all these walls. The data doesn't get shared. You know, there's all of these, you know, very separate applications. And so how to bring them together is not just kind of an issue for people on the business or marketing, but very much for organizational design. And that's why we had a professor in that area join us for that one. So some of the typical mistakes that retail IT and data leaders make in what we researched and the people we interviewed for that book, it had mostly to do with kind of not allowing for enough interactions between, let's say, the IT or the data scientists and the business folks. So very often you come into a building and they're even at different floors, they don't have lunch together. And so, a company said, oh, let's hire some people in IT or data science with a very hot technology. But then those folks don't talk to the business people actually having to make the decisions. And so they don't get the right stakeholders, and then they produce very pure solutions which are not used. So I think that's a recurring theme that I saw coming back in failures in any retail technology and digital transformation, and really any project that really requires you to kind of make technology useful for decision makers in the organization.
Mm-hmm. And probably on top of that, as the store person here, is also loop in store feedback. What do they need? What are they seeing? What is the customer asking for? What is the customer not asking for? Because often the solutions are implemented sometimes in large retail chains for stores that stores didn't ever ask for or need. And so that idea, I agree with you, and not working in a silo, and often the store is not part of the conversation. So that I would just throw that out as I've seen it happen many times in my career, and it's time to potentially solve some of that.
As we often say, is we in the ivory tower have no friggin' idea what's going on.
Right. Right, and the store does, or the restaurant, or
I don't care. The frontline troops always understand better, and I mean that's just, and even in IT. Yeah. You want to know how good an application is? Talk to the testers. They'll tell you if it's good or bad. You want to know what's going on in the store? Talk to the associates there. They'll tell you what's happening. And they'll tell you when your supply chain is messed up, the customers are upset, and so forth.
Yep. Agreed. Just a quick call out to the audience too. If you have any questions that you want to bounce into this conversation, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll take a look at them as we continue the conversation. I want to jump into retail security, and this very important part of the future of our business, and as laws change and things continue to evolve, what does that mean? So Pete, I'll jump that back to you. Yeah. Where does retail security land in your world today?
Yeah, it's huge. It's high. And I'm going to throw some horror stories out to folks. I want people to understand just how bad it's getting. And this is, I think, one of the questions we talk about is how do I get the executive suite to change and stuff like that. So, so the hacking, the ransomware is real. It's getting worse. Not only are they locking up computers, they are, of course, stealing data. They hold the company hostage because they have their data, which may link, their intellectual secrets that may link. They're now taking data from associates inside there and holding the associates hostage also, CFO salaries and things like that. There's one case that I was working with a group with, and they had a hospital chain to where the hackers got in and they got pictures, of ladies undergoing mammograms, and they held that hostage. Another hospital chain locked up all the servers, and people that needed surgeries and things like that all got postponed. And we kind of look at that clinical until you realize that they had a patient die because they couldn't get the surgery in time. And so it's very real. And for us in the retail side, it's not as bad unless it's like your supply chain and you're moving critical items into your supply chain, which is a big issue. We normally look at it as brand damage and financial, but it's getting a lot worse. So as you go through your security measures, it's got to take top precedence on what you do. If not, it will lead to brand damage and you will lose loyalty from your customers. And so I take it pretty serious. I kind of jokingly say I'm bald and gray at a young age, but that's just kind of the world we live in right now. And so sometimes as you go into the issues, is you got to inject the security issues. I mean, and security just isn't the cyber, it's now physical. What happens if a store gets overwhelmed by people trying to take stuff and you hurt an associate?
Mhm.
So it's taken on a bigger tone than most people think when they start talking security.
Wow. And are there any particular recommendations you would make to those that are, have realized that they have some challenges? Not recommendations from a brand
Yeah.
perspective, but where do you start? How do you start?
Yeah, it's the old adage, start. Yeah, I know
Start.
it's real simple, but a lot of people stick, and you said it right, they stick their head in the sand on it, like, I'm too busy, I gotta get this out and that out, and we don't have time to do our tabletop security thing. Okay, I get that. Or I don't have time there's business risk, I don't want to bifurcate my network so that I have a lot of smaller segments. Or I can't find, we don't have enough money to go get a Carbon Black and Red Canary and all the more modern tools. Or we don't want to offend anybody by scanning our systems all the time, or having to reboot point of sale systems and property management systems and those type things. We inconvenience and they're kind of old, slow servers. Well, you're just setting yourself up for heartache. And I will tell you, and I'll just kind of throw it out there just so everyone has a realm of understanding. We got hacked at Friendly's. They got 12 servers, and I was able to work our way out of it. But how it got in was they sent they sent an email in for an invoice into our invoice mailbox, and our AP associate did what that AP associate is supposed to go do: opened it up and tried to put it in the system for payment. They zipped the package, or the bad stuff, the package, and they put a username and password down in the body of the email. The AP associate did her job like she was supposed to go do, and the package, because it was zipped, was not scanned by the email scanning program. So education programs are huge for you.
Mm.
And it's not if you get hacked, it's when you get hacked. At another place, at another hotel chain, Wyndham, we had a franchisee kind of out of our control, dual hone the system. They put two network interface cards in, and it jumped in, and then it jumped over and came into our network. And it got into some point of sale systems, or to be property management systems that never get turned off. And there, remained resident in memory, not on the hard disk, but in memory. And it was a keystroke logger, and it would get a certain amount of information, and then it was trying to send the information off to Russia, to where they would use a parser for credit card numbers. And luckily it did not get out, because we blocked our firewall for stuff leaving the information, just not trying to get into the organization. So it's a really bad, malicious world, and it's an unfair fight. You got your security guys, one or two, trying to take this whole big infrastructure, and you got one guy or two guys over in some malicious organization just trying to find that one little vulnerability to get in the door.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's terrifying and emotional, and but ignoring it is not an option.
No.
So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Powell, is there anything you would add around this based on your research?
So a lot of my research these days is into personalization and privacy, right? And so and also kind of the role of personalized advertising in this space. And so we see that, with the exception of some folks, right, including Pete and I, who are just very goal-directed, a lot of consumers come to, for instance, online retail to browse, to explore new products and so forth. And so, both kind of published research and what we see, has demonstrated that kind of advertising serves as an information function. It helps you make aware of new products. Advertised products tend to be of higher quality also, for good reason, right? Because it's in the best interest if you have a better quality product to actually advertise it. And so a lot of the interest these days is in retail media as an AI application. And so there's just, wonderful technologies that retailers now don't have to start from scratch, but can actually kind of leverage, things that have been tried and tested for a while to then apply to their own space. And there's some interesting research that I'm doing academically in terms of how do different consumers feel about this. And to what extent are they, for instance, okay with one-party cookies because they trust you and they want you as a retailer to recommend based on what you did with the exact same retailer in the past, and they don't like third-party cookies. They don't like you sharing information about them, and so that's a wonderful and the big kind of discrepancy in terms of the ivory tower is like there's an economist ivory tower that only looks at what they call stated preference, so what you do. And they're like, look, consumers don't care about privacy because if you confront them with, hey, either pay $10 a month or, don't pay it, but allow for third-party cookies, they allow for the free option. Then there's these dog pattern researchers, mostly in sociology, would say, no, consumers care a lot about privacy and they don't want personalized ads because here is the service. We ask consumers and they say they don't like it. I was like, well, probably the truth is somewhere in between. So we're looking at much more specific methods that are born and raised in marketing, such as conjoint analysis, to kind of simulate actual choice situations right now, to come up with, well, there's differences in consumers. How do you best approach the topic with them? And how do you give them, choices and that they can make informed decisions in terms of that personalization?
Mm-hmm. You brought up an interesting point around kind of choosing the right vendors. And I would say several times this week, I've heard on stage here at Shop Talk, to the audience of retailers, hundreds of them that are here, don't try to build it yourself. Like there are enough solutions out there today that are with organizations and vendors who work with dozens of customers who are refining their craft and the product just gets better and better. Don't try to build it yourself. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. There is lots of stuff out there, and then so the interesting thing is kind of the technology has been tested. Of course, that doesn't always mean it works for your specific consumers as a retailer. So you may still want to first, it's all about test and learn, also in AI, right? You may first want to test it out on a kind of in a small field experiment, as I call it, on your own consumers, because the technology will be fed with data from your own consumers. Because things that has happened in the past, that's anonymized and that is part of the technology. But so even if the technology is very good in general, and you hear from your peers it's really working for them, I would say always also test it with your own consumers and with the kind of information that they give you to work with.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Pete, would you also agree with that? I'm sure you've used multiple solutions in the brands that you've led.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've gone from in the early 2000s, we would build solutions. Now we procure solutions. There's no doubt about it. And, something to, keep the competency of the company, the competency of the company. So in other words, in car rental, we call it rear ends and seats, or excuse me, butts and seats. In hotels, it's heads and beds. Do you want to focus the organization on heads and beds? But also we got this pseudo part of our organization on how to develop code. And they kind of go, nah, let's get out of that business. Let's focus the entire organization on doing this and not worry about defect rates and source lines of code and things of that nature and all of that stuff. So we are definitely living in the world of package modification right now. What is important though is as you look at package modification is who owns the data, how does your data integrate, how does your applications integrate through API with other solutions and so forth. And that's where the more of the modern IT focuses today.
Yeah. And back to the security conversation. Same. Now you've got data in potentially in multiple places. So
yes.
Back to doing it the right way.
Comes down to those agreements.
Yeah.
Will those vendors indemnify you? Is it worth it? How do they do it? How do they go do it? Do they follow, CCPA and GDPR, i.e. when you give them a call and say you just had a request to delete data, will they follow it from their systems and so forth to support you, i.e. belly up to the bar with you on your security issues and problems?
I was going to say, I completely agree with focus on your core competencies. I mean, Back in 2016, I was visiting Harvard at the time. We consulted Best Buy, right, which at the time was in considerable trouble, and we advised them to become a store within a store. We were like, look, you're very good, or you can become even better at creating traffic to your physical store. We don't think that everybody's always going to shop online for everything. But why don't you invite the brands to come in your store and have their booths there, which they can do better than you can do, so you can fully focus on creating traffic inside the door. And so I definitely see this kind of focus on core competencies coming back, and then having good vendors for other things that are important.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think the clear knowledge of the customer, knowing what you stand for and who you are, what you say, what the consistency and the experience you deliver, both in every channel, is the future. I think very much of the industry in hotel, in restaurant, in retail. The customer expectations are very high. They are expecting consistency in delivery promises, consistency in experiences, and this continued kind of elevation of what's happening in the world, and a knowledge of them. I think, Pete, you brought it up early in the conversation, kind of a one vision picture of the customer. It's not a store customer versus an e-com customer. It's I'm a customer, and how I behave and what I need should be very clear at every touch point. Yeah, thank you. We have just a few minutes left, and I really wanted to end it speaking about the future. And there's a question that says, which technology do you think is the biggest game changer in the retail space? So future thinking, what would be your opinions? Dr. Pauwels, I'll start with you, what's the biggest game changer of the future of retail?
So in general, it is the combination of humans and machines, right? So I've worked in market research for a long time, and I have always imagined kind of the perfect kind of decision assistant to be virtual reality, going back to your point, Pete, then you give voice commands, right? So I'm like, okay, talk me about a specific consumer segment in Vegas, for instance. And then in my virtual reality, the avatar of AI becomes that consumer segment, is a person that dresses and talks like that particular segment. And I can ask questions, and based on their knowledge base, they answer me. And so that's kind of the future that I see. I always kind of like, as a manager, to give voice input and to get very rich experience back. So I'm still dreaming of that one as my ultimate interface. If I can talk to the customer, live in person, which I always love to do when I have the chance, I would like to have such an experience. And I think ultimately we're going to get there.
Very interesting. Pete, what would you say? Biggest game changer of the future of our business?
Not sexy. I hate to say it, but it's a high fidelity data set that has your customers in it. And here's why I say that. I mean, it's not sexy. I get all that, right? But hey, you want, personalization. We all know the game is personalization. What does it take to get you personalization? It's a high fidelity data set that can give you the information that you need. The old adage, right price, right customer at the right time. Okay. And so that's important. Another reason for a high fidelity data set, AI, right? And being able to go do that. Well, got news for you. AI is a data set on the back end side. We're just using algorithms to pull that data set and pull it out there. So again, it's not IoT. IoT is kind of nice because you got a device, the variables are really precise, and you also have good solid information coming off of it. So you don't have all the data cleaning stuff associated with all the other solutions, right? So it's really good, but it's the data set to go do that. So I am still, all these years, extremely bullish on data science, clean data sets, all the way across the board. And I would be able to drive businesses to a higher level of profitability. And let me just give you, I know, Ron, we gotta go here, and I see the questions are building up here also, so I wanted to give you time to take us through those. But anyway, so real simple. I was at Friendly's, And in the restaurant industry, they have something called day parts, and they're really proud of measuring restaurants in day parts. Day parts is a 4-hour set. Yeah, that's kind of neat. So morning, afternoon, dinner, evening, whatever, 4 hours. But we all know that this day and age, your data is down to the millisecond if you wanted to get it there, right? So anyway, so we were into delivery, and that's how I was able to really turn them around. We took a hotel approach to delivery, taking prices up and down. It's a different story. But I started looking at all the analytics, and all the marketing guy or all the ops guys were running around saying, we're a food delivery company. Oh, this is great. We're making money. We're profitable. Food delivery. And I go, no, you're not. What do you mean? You are a dairy delivery company. People just love fribbles and ice cream. They love having dessert delivered to their door. Oh, yeah, really? Yeah, look, it's right there. And then I started saying, you know, this day part thing, that's old fashioned. Let's start the higher fidelity of the numbers here. So we had strong delivery from 6 to 7, stronger from 7 to 8, stronger from 8 to 9, 9 to 10 was stronger, but we closed the restaurants at 9:30. Why? Day parts, you never would have picked it up. But so now we started saying, well, close the dining rooms at 9:30, but keep a bagger and a cook there. And I'll do delivery for another 2 hours and make a lot more money. I am bullish on analytics and what it can go do for you. And that's really simple. Now you start putting predictive analytics in there, you start reading signals and so forth. The sky's the limit to personalization, profitability, and so forth. All these new emerging technologies, as the doctor said, and Ron has kind of said, I will probably tell you there's a data back end, and then we still live in a binary world.
Wow. Fascinating. And I love your point of view, which is why I love people that have roles that you do, because using the data to make and also shave our heads to make smart decisions. You know, when you can present to a board and you can have conversations with the field and say, not only have we gathered your feedback that's more personal and maybe more emotional, here's the data set, this high fidelity data set that is really influencing our ability to make decisions. And here are the decisions we've made. And here's why this is going to be good for you as an employee. This is why it's good for us as a business. This is why it's good for our stock price. I just think there's important conversations that happen in the merge of really important data and really important field conversations. So thank you for articulating that. I think it's a great way to run a business. And clearly you did that. You mentioned bringing these big, huge restaurant chains to profitability. Clearly that's how you did that. So thank you. We have just a couple of minutes left. A lot of the questions are really around kind of AI implementation or what's important. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Pauwels, as you scan some of these around AI. Any kind of final thoughts here? Yeah. We knew it was going to be a big topic and no surprise.
So let me take the easiest one, right? How can we ensure that the AI processes are accurate with full confidence? You can't. That's very easy. So especially if you mean with accurate 100% and full confidence, right? So to me, we're always looking for an improvement, right? So just as Pete, talked about the friendly stories, you didn't have to optimize. You didn't have to know exactly how long, how many minutes you had to keep the delivery open, but you saw a pattern in the data and you say, hey, if we go towards that, it's and hoping it's an improvement on what we're currently doing. So we look at small improvements instead of trying to make it perfect right away, which is I think really the difference between academia and practice in my eyes. And so if you can use the AI so that it improves over your existing practice, if it is sustainable in the sense that, to question 3, it doesn't completely disrupt your current, or it disrupts it in a way that is seen by people in your organization as a really good way to do that, then it's great. And so just as you said, kind of in both of my books, we take the perspective of the employee, right? So my latest one is why and how to democratize digital in your business. And it's because, you can't just say this is good for the company, go do it. Specifically because new technologies ask people to collect data, to take time away from their normal duties typically. So you have to show how it will benefit them, how it will ease their pain points, how it will improve their career. And so you have to think about really how you need to implement the technology and what's in it for them to really make it shine.
Yeah. Is there a world where it becomes kind of a test and learn, try some things, versus going all in and investing millions of dollars before you actually know if you need it? Is there a way to do this in a small test and learn format?
Yeah, so I termed in one of my papers MEME, which stands for model, experiment. And that's because I'm an economist by training. So I love to take high fidelity data and analyze with them and tell you what to do. But then we always test it in an experiment, typically a field experiment on a small scale, like one city or one particular way that you can see in real life, hey, this has the benefit that the model or the AI predicts. And then we're going to model again, because it may be that we overshot. It may be that we can get the same benefit using less resources. And then we experiment again. So that cycle of experimenting and then getting models and AI to kind of show you which direction you should go and then implement it, I think that's the best way. So kind of, walk in small steps, right. Specifically if it's the latest technology that may sound very cool, but hasn't really been tested yet.
Yeah, thank you. Pete, what would you add to that conversation?
So a lot of ambiguity around AI is, first of all, people don't understand AI. So there are actually development processes like CRISP-DM out of IBM and so forth that talk about what's your business case, variable sets, cleaning up the variable sets, taking you all the way through to the test and an implementation, and then also in model maintenance too. So know when does the model start throwing too many errors. So you're always checking the models to make sure that you're not, throwing too many errors. Because we're on a model built in, let's just say 2000, but pre-pandemic, of course, busted during the pandemic. So there's a model maintenance of these two to where you start looking for the error. And so that's a question. But go look at the development process of CRISP-DM and so forth, and clean data sets, variables, what you need, the association analysis to go build your algorithms to help propel you into AI. A lot of people would just use the buzzword, the top level, but you really got to get into those processes, and then you'll learn that you can go do that. And then, of course, you got to understand the different, you got to know the binaries, splits, and association algorithms, how they all work. The tough ones, of course, are neural networks. They're kind of difficult to understand. When I go talk to different groups, statistics was the course you didn't want to take in university, and it's all statistics. And of course, our statisticians try to do something like techies do all the time, is they got a completely different language to talk about something that's actually pretty common and easy to understand. But you just got to get in there and you got to go learn it. If you don't, it's going to be this foreign language, and you're not going to know how to go do that, how to go do it.
Yeah. And Pete, would any particular recommendations that people can go and learn more about this? Resources? We've got a new book from Dr.
There are
Powell,
a lot
of
of good ones out there that talk about how to go develop models, how to the power of models and so forth. And it is a different world. It is not an accurate world, to be honest with you. But as you go in, if I was to go in, and one of the questions here is, how do you know if the model is going bad? Well, you forecast and you record what that forecast is, and then you verify to that forecast. Well, that's the exact same dang on thing that your accounting group should be doing when they forecast the business, right? They ought to, but they never record it and to see how well you're actually doing against it. So anyway, I lost track of thought there.
Lots of homework to do.
There is.
It sounds like be smart about it.
And you got to learn it. It's really powerful. Yeah, I know what I was telling you. If I was to trust a human to make a gut instinct, you're going to be right 30% of the time. I'm going to take a great guy like Dr. Powell's, tremendous experience, tremendous knowledge, and say, Dr. Powell's, forecast the NCAA tournament for me. And he's going to be right about 30% of the time. In most years, this is not a year, right? He's going to be right. But if you leave it to an analytic model, you're going to be right 80 to 90% of the time. And you get to say what right is, because you can set that variable. If it's flagged above a 90% confidence, we're going to call it right. Or if it's above an 85% confidence, we're going to call it right. And so you get to go do that. And that's odd. That's hard to understand in the business world. I've tried to sell analytic solutions in, and they want to know, is it right? And you kind of go, no, it's 85% right, 90%. And they kind of go poo-poo. And then there's kind of discretionary dollars, and they don't want to go throw it at it because it's not right. And then you bust their bubble a little bit. You say, well, neither is your accounting system. Your guesses, things like that.
I will agree with that one. So in my courses on marketing analytics, I kind of teach marketing folks how to understand how analytic people think and how to basically be good consumers of the model, right? Know how to kick the tires and see what it does. Because all models are wrong, some are useful, and so right now, kind of, and a typical example about sport is the World Cup, right? So there was this, I think, a model at Oxford had predicted that the final will be between Brazil and Belgium, my team, and I'm like, no, I know that even Kevin De Bruyne, the star player, said, look, we're too old to do this, and I knew they were going to underperform, and so as a human, things that maybe not in the database are assumptions that the model is making that you really have to question and stop before you get a bad result, and always test and verify. That's absolutely key.
Thank you. And Dr. Powell's, just as we wrap up here, tell us about your new book.
Oh, so it's in Break the Walls. So we have interviewed several people on digital transformation that had failures and successes, including a very, very cool guy from the Red Sox, for those of you who like the sports analogies, but also people from Google, Wayfair, Victoria's Secret. And so we really distill in each of the chapters some of the key learnings when you go through that journey.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot. I really appreciate your time today, Dr. Powell's and Pete Gibson. I think your expertise and your insights into kind of what's happening in all aspects of our business, and particularly your technology and AI and the future and security are really important conversations. I very appreciate your expertise and sharing today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Brittany, who will close out the show for us today.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for such an insightful panel. I also want to thank everyone for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. Thank you guys again.